All right. Welcome to another episode of the Tsongas Center Social Talks. We're here today with Kevin Dwyer of the Lowell Folk Festival. Kevin's the executive director of the festival. Kevin, it's great to see you again, my friend. How have you been?
I've been great, Alex. I really appreciate the chance to come on and chat with you. It's been too long.
It's been a while, especially since I think we were talking here a few minutes ago, but we back in May we were really kind of in the midst of planning the folk festival, and then things certainly turned around pretty quickly there.
Yeah, things turned around. It took a very sharp left turn from where we had been originally planning. And that was kind of a chaotic moment because obviously the pandemic was in full swing, quarantine was in full effect. So everybody's working from home and everyone isn't sure, is there going to be a festival or won't there be? But we had to still keep planning like there was going to be a festival, even though there was a doubt lingering in everybody's mind. So it got pretty chaotic in April and early May. But ultimately, things got a little bit easier for us after we were sort of realizing that we had to make a decision, which ended up in us canceling the festival for this year.
Right. And I know, I guess the best way to ask this, but how hard was that decision? I know it's basically the festival, you start planning the next one after the current one finishes, like the next day it feels like sometimes. So knowing it was the right thing, obviously, but how hard still was the decision to actually cancel?
Oh, it was so hard because none of us on the behind the scenes side of it ever want to take a day off from planning this. You know, like you said, when the festival ends in the last weekend of July, the very next day, we're cleaning up the festival and already starting to plan the next one. So it really is a year-long commitment to planning this thing. So it's really what we do and it's what we love to do. But more than that, we recognize that this is a really important event for the city for so many different reasons. It's one of the only opportunities that the city can have a free event where people can come from all over and enjoy the food and the music and the crafts that represent so many different cultures and backgrounds. So it's great that we have an event that's sort of set up in our own backyards where it's free and you get to go hang out and listen to music from bands that are from Africa or China or South America, just from all over the world. We literally fly in people internationally to come from all over the world to Lowell. And it's such a special thing. We love doing that. So not having that, it's kind of a bummer because we all love the different parts of the festival. We love the music. I especially love the food. So to not have that is, you know, even on a personal level, something that I'm really bummed out about. And not to mention the fact that it's such a big, impactful weekend for the city. It's a hard enough thing trying to organize a festival for 150,000 people with 24 different bands that are flying in from all over the world and all these different 24 food vendors from around the area. It's hard enough organizing all of that and getting the city ready for that. But if you're going to add all this infrastructure on top of it to keep people safe, we just weren't confident that we could safely do it. And so that's when we had to step back and say, I know it's not what we want to do, but this is how we feel like we can safely go forward, is just put a pin in it for 2020, come back in 2021 stronger than ever.
No, totally understandable. And like you said, it's tough. It had to be one of the harder decisions to make, just not even for you, but for the group. So I totally get it. I was kind of thinking about the things that I like about the festival. You know, the food is a big one for me too, the music, obviously. But I also like the idea that the way it's spread out, that you can basically explore different parts of the city as you're attending. Like you're not stuck in one particular area. So I think that's kind of unique. Is that normal for a folk festival this size? Kind of, can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, one thing I've noticed is that some people are explorers. And before I had the job where I was organizing the festival, I would attend and I would like to go around and see all the different sites. I would follow bands to different stages just so I could see what the different setups were. And I liked doing that because you got to see a lot of downtown. So it's not only the music stages, which you could spend all day doing it, and people do that. But you get to see Lucy Larcombe Park with the folk life area and the foodways cooks that if you're not walking through there, you might not even know that that exists, but it's this really interesting place. And same can be said about the different food vendors. You got different vendors at all of the different areas of the festival. So I have my favorites for sure. You know, I'm big on the the Polish pierogies and the Armenian food. But there is other stuff elsewhere, which is also worth checking out. So all of our 5 stages have this really diverse and different group of food vendors that you can explore. So by venturing out to the city, you get to see how different businesses interact with the festival. You get a lot of restaurants that are normally not open to patio seating, and now all of a sudden they have concerts going on the sidewalk in front of their business. Yeah. And people get to really kind of get creative with how they interact with the festival, and how the festival interacts with them is really unique.
No, that's awesome. And you kind of, obviously, we know that you're the executive director, of the festival. And you mentioned a couple of times, there's 100,000 people, 150,000 people, depending on probably the weather and what's going on that weekend. But how is it? It's got to be a little crazy to know that kind of like your name's at the top of the organization chart for a festival this big, type of thing, and trying to get all the logistics and bring everything together. And that certainly doesn't all come down to you, because I know you have a great team, but just like it's got to be a little almost pressure knowing that your name's on the top there.
It was a lot of pressure in my first year, especially. As years have gone on, though, I've begun to learn how to lean back on our partners and our volunteers that help us out. So one thing that a lot of people don't realize about this festival is it's produced in part by the Lowell Festival Foundation, but we have 6 partners total that put this together. So that's not only the Lowell Festival Foundation, but it's the City of Lowell, it's the Lowell National Historical Park, the Greater Merrimack Valley Convention and Visitors Bureau, the Chamber of Commerce, and the National Council for Traditional Arts. And the National Council for Traditional Arts is actually based in Washington, D.C. They're a folklore organization, and they're the ones that do a lot of the heavy lifting on reaching out to the bands and doing research on who we should get from year to year. So there's a lot of people helping out in a lot of different ways. And it's just kind of fun that we get to interact together and bring these different skill sets and different areas of expertise together. So it's great when you get to have the city involved, and then they can have their logistics people really take a look at things and figure out how you're physically going to get things put together. And that can be different from how the National Council for Traditional Arts will talk to me about putting a program together of artists, because that's obviously more artistic and esoteric of a job to do. Not to say that they don't get into the nuts and bolts too, because they do all the production aspects as well. Right. But it is fun dealing with all of them, and they definitely help take a lot of the pressure off of me, because there's so much coordination that has to go on between 6 organizations that are putting on an event of this size. But I've been learning a little bit year to year. I've been kind of figuring out what are some of the situations that usually come up that you might not expect, but you got to figure out who's in charge of what and who's the person to call when, stuff is going wrong and you're not sure what's going on, who can kind of figure that stuff out. So that's been fun.
No, 100%. Yeah, that all makes sense. And yeah, it's got to be crazy trying to, I sat in a few of the organization meetings as of late, but yeah, it's just insane for sure. But I guess the good news is that for people that really love going to the Folk Fest and stuff, they're not totally out of luck this year. I know you guys are planning a virtual celebration of the Lowell Folk Fest. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so this has been a really fun project that we've been getting to work on, because we were all going to be really sad that there was going to be nothing in July. If you're driving around downtown Lowell these days, you're probably noticing how it's a little empty for how July usually starts to look, because we start to get, hints of the festival start popping up all over the city or in the month of July. And it's kind of a bummer that you don't see a whole lot of it going on right now. So what we've been trying to do is figure out a fun, free way for people to experience some aspect of the folk festival, where they can do it safely from home if they want, and they can do it in a way that at least is reminiscent of the fun of being at the festival. So unfortunately, we can't do smell-o-vision. You can't get the food vendors really involved there. Although I would like to say that all of the food vendors are, local nonprofit organizations in and of themselves, and they're still doing good work year round, not even at the folk festival. So if you have a favorite food vendor at the festival, it's still worth looking into them and checking them out. So what we've really been focusing on is putting together a program of both new and old videos of performances of musicians and artists we've had, as well as some behind the scenes looks at things such as the folk life area and the foodways area. So we're trying to use this as an opportunity to have a little new, have a little old, because we're a traditional festival. We're all about preserving the tradition. So everybody wants to see some archive footage of some of their favorite bands. So what we've got planned for the weekend is a weekend-long radio presentation. So the National Council for Traditional Arts was able to go through their records and their archives, and they found, I think, 13 different radio programs that were produced in the 90s by late Joe Wilson. Joe Wilson was the guy who originally worked for the National Council for Traditional Arts and came to Lowell and said, we can have a festival here. So he's the guy that truly saw it all from the beginning, saw Lowell's potential and made it happen. And he's such an amazing orator. He's really knowledgeable about traditional arts and music especially. So he has these amazing radio programs that he produced in the 90s that we're able to restore and remaster sort of and have the audio quality be really great. And we're going to be streaming that all weekend long. It's not really going to be all weekend long because there's only 13-hour-long episodes, but we're going to spread it out over the course of the weekend. So right now we're looking at Friday evening and Saturday afternoon and Sunday afternoon. We're going to have these long blocks of just Folk Fest radio produced by Joe Wilson back in the 90s. So you can see those on the Lowell Folk Festival Facebook page or YouTube page. And you can also go to our website, lowellfolkfestival.org, to be directed on how to interact with it and how you can tune in and be a part of it. And also worth noting that we're going terrestrial radio on this too. So our great partners at WCAP in downtown Lowell, 980 AM, they're a great partner for us, and they said we're more than happy to broadcast whatever audio you want us to. So that's just another way that you get to do it. So if you're going to be driving around on that weekend, then you get to blast that in the car as you're tooling around downtown Lowell and checking out the old festival spots. And I think that'll be a really great way to experience it. Another thing that we're really excited about for this weekend, probably the coup de grace of the whole weekend this year, is going to be Saturday night at 6:30 on the Lowell Folk Festival YouTube page and on our Facebook page. We're going to be having a video celebration of the festival. So that's going to include archive performances that we have videotaped from previous years of the Lowell Folk Festival. We also have bands that are fan favorites of the festival, like Levant du Nord, who's a Quebecois band, The Alt, who's an Irish band, Grupo Revolu, who's a Colombian band. They're recording exclusive songs for us to use in this video. So it's great. We reached out to them, said we want you to be involved, and they said they're happy to be involved and do something for us. So we have some brand new exclusive content, which is great because we didn't think we'd have anything this year, but now these groups are really great and helpful, and they wanted to help out. So we have some new recordings as well. And one part that I'm especially excited for is there's going to be a 15-minute Lowell Folk Festival documentary. So there is a videographer who's following the NCTA around last year's festival, and he was able to put together this really nice collection of interviews and performance footage and everything together into making like a pretty cool documentary that I think anyone who's been to the festival before is going to be really excited to see. So that's going to be great to check out for Saturday, July 25th, 6:30. So tune in on our Facebook page.
Well, between that and the radio and everything else you guys got going on, I have to clear my weekend for sure. So I guess as we finish up, Kevin, thanks for joining us. I'm really looking forward to the virtual celebration here next week. And I hope we don't take so long to catch up again.
I hope not. This was a lot of fun, Alex. I appreciate you having me on.
Thank you.